I think there was about a 20,000 application backlog during COVID. And then in February, when our government spent, I think it was 4 million on new adjudicators into the landlord and tenant board, the applications were at 40,000. And I think right now they're at 50 to 55.
Simona, Quinton, we got lots of shit to talk about today.
Lots of it.
Landlord and tenant board. We were briefly talking before we turned the mics on of all the shit that you're seeing.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
All right. So before we dive into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure.
Like who you are, what you do,
Sure.
why you decided to do this crazy business that you're in.
Perfect.
All right,
Perfect. So I'm a licensed paralegal. I have been for about 17 years.
Yeah.
I started off on my own doing small claims, doing landlord and tenant. And that was when things were in person. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of observing. And I just felt pulled towards helping people. And I felt that I would always be able to help people because I was always one-on-one with them. They always had a problem. Nobody ever calls me to say, hello, how are you? They call to say, I have a problem. Oh, I know a person that needs you. Oh, it's always something.
Right.
And I maybe instinctually and so motherly that I just love doing that. So when I had decided to move on into a different sphere of personal injury, I was helping people even more. When I opened my firm about 6 years ago, we started doing personal injury and real estate. So that brought me back into the landlord and tenant world. And right now, it has exploded.
Yeah.
Like never before. When I was in person, I didn't see the things that were happening now. Things were happening. Don't get me wrong. I've seen crazy things, but nothing like this. A lot of underhandedness is happening.
What do you think is causing it? Is it the housing crisis? Is it the fact that there isn't enough rentals out there? Or is it, do you think that on both sides, there's a lot more education that's happened because of social media, the easy access to information? What do you think's happening?
I would say all of the above, plus government. The tribunals, and it's not just the landlord and tenant tribunal. It's also other tribunals. There's a license appeal tribunal that personal injury world works with. They're backed up as well. You can't have anyone do anything because they're handcuffed for up to a year. So
it's a year.
It's a year. It's full circle. It's a year. You serve one form, you wait 2 weeks, you serve another form, you wait for the board to give you, your selection of dates. Then your selection of dates is 6 to 8 to 10 months out from your original form. Then you get an order. You wait for that order. After your hearing, you have to wait for an order. It's not like you're at a hearing and they're saying, here you go, here's your order, sir, ma'am. You wait for their decision in the mail. That could be 2 to 4 weeks. Then you have to go to the sheriff and have it actually happen. So that's a year. Imagine not being able to pay your mortgage for a year. That's if people are not paying. Right. What do you do?
Do you find, or at least are you seeing that that's what's happening, where tenants are just like flat out not paying? Or do you see, like, what's the percentage of tenants that are actually trying to pay? Like they're actually, they want a roof over their heads.
So I'm going to say it's 50-50. Because not all tenants are refusing to leave and don't want to pay. A lot of tenants are paying and saying, we just can't afford to leave. We can't afford to leave our $2,500 all in to go and pay $3,200 plus. They just can't do it. They can't afford it. Life has just changed for everybody, but it's also changed for the landlords as well.
Yeah, and it's not even $2,500. You're seeing people who are paying $1,200, $1,500. Mm-hmm. And those were normal rents, Quinton. Mm-hmm. Remember, like back in the days?
Yep.
And now like these numbers, they're astronomical.
They are.
And they're moving up so fast.
They are. But there's reasons for everything. There's reasons why the prices are getting higher. There's reasons why people are not being able to afford anything. There's a reason for everything. But I always say at the end of the day, the relationship between the landlord and the tenant is the most important thing, because landlords are not educated on how to be a landlord, and tenants are being educated by social media, by poor advice, illegal advice on how to be bad tenants, and vice versa. It's terrible.
What do you think will resolve this issue? I'm sure you must spend hours every night. Like, if I was in charge, this is what I would do. Here's what I would fix. Here's what I would change. Here's how it needs to work. Like, what's your idea, Simona?
So landlords need to have, I don't know. So right now, Brampton has proposed to do licensing for landlords. Whether it's a cash grab, whether it's something that's going to help landlords, I'm not sure. But landlords need to be properly educated. They need to know about forms. They need to know about their duties. They need to understand that if you put in a clause that you can't have a pet, you can have a pet. They need to get it. They need to understand that they have a job to do. Tenants also need to respect the space. They need to not feel entitled like it's their home. They're taking care of somebody else's home 100%, but they've developed the sense of entitlement. I spend every night, right before I go to bed, on Facebook, and I go through all of these Facebook groups, and they're all landlord and tenant groups.
Okay.
And
individual, like you have a landlord group and then you have a tenant group.
And then there's landlord and tenant groups. They have groups that are combined.
Okay.
And the common thing that I see is that there's people just giving poor advice. Oh, my landlord wants to kick me out. They're selling the house. They want me out by February 1st. And you just see a thread of 20, 30 replies. You don't have to leave until the board tells you to leave. Wait for an order. It's going to take them a year. So you're giving them that encouragement, that power to screw their landlord. That's it. That's what's happening. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you touched on something that I thought was important, and we used to do this. Well, I still do this anyways with my tenants, because I've got, you know, many of my properties I have that I purchased, several years ago, many years ago. Almost feels like eons now. One of the things that we used to teach our investors was treat your tenants like gold. And so when they would move in, I would follow up with them a couple of weeks afterwards. Hey, how was the move? I would drop off a nice little gift basket for them. Then at the end of the year at Christmas, we would drop off like $100 gift card or $150 gift. Like we created a good relationship. And it feels like maybe that's what's missing part of it now. Is do you think that there's also just people just treat it like a business? I could get it. Yes, treat it like a business. But it almost feels like there's not even that relationship anymore.
So I always talk to people and I ask them, when's the last time that you were at your house? Landlord specifically, right? Yeah. When's the last time that you actually did a hello, a check-in, something? I always get the same response. And this is already when I'm hearing about problems. Oh, I haven't been there for a year. Why? Yeah. Why haven't you been there for a year? If I think about it, okay, let's say I have a boyfriend and, you know, we start our relationship and then I just stop calling him. I stop texting him. I just completely avoid him. He's probably gonna either break up with me or treat me like crap, right?
Right.
That's just, it's the same thing. It's a relationship. Doesn't matter which way you cut it. It's a relationship. And on top of that, you have somebody who's taking care of your property. You should be more involved, even more so.
100%. Yeah. I mean, what do you do with your tenants, Q?
Well, I'm there 3-4 times a year, right? Whether it's changing furnace filters. I started last week, the water shut off, right? Going through the properties, doing that winter maintenance. And then it's just an interaction. Hey, how you doing? And the next one will be the Christmas gifts, right? So communication can solve so many problems, right? Yep. Open communication, anything goes wrong, they tell you right away, okay, let's address that. And it's back and forth. It's a two-way street. But when people don't communicate, they sign the lease, landlord disappears, tenants are doing what they want. That's when things can get slippery.
Sure. Right? And you know what? Like, you know, people are like, $100, that's a lot. No, it's not. That's nothing.
That's nothing.
Especially when you've got somebody that's looking after one of the biggest investments that you're ever going to purchase. That is you're probably getting a better gift also too than maybe even some of their families giving them.
Yeah.
So for $100 or $150
for we'll call them a client paying you 25 to 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
I don't understand, because if you don't have a condominium, let's say you're renting out a house, you have an obligation to cut the grass and clean the snow. So why haven't you been there for a year? They're not supposed to do it. It's not part of their contract. You're not allowed to have them do it unless you have a completely separate contract and you're paying them for it or you're compensating them for it. You have to be there. So why aren't you there?
Yeah. What's the rent increase for 2024?
2.5. It's the same.
It's the same as 2023?
They've kept it the same.
Okay. How does that work, and what type of notice do you have to give your tenants?
So it's a 90-day notice with an N1, I believe. You give it to them, and you can only give it once every 12 months. And that's for units built before 2018. After 2018, it's different. After 2018, it's not as regulated. It's not regulated at all, actually. So I've had people come to me and say, I want to increase. That's the other thing, actually. Landlords are scared. They're afraid to do anything. They're afraid to give the wrong notice. They're afraid to call their tenant. They're afraid to ask for, an inspection. They're afraid to give them those 24-hour notices. They're afraid of everything because they're afraid that if they do one little wrong thing, tenant's going to say, oh, I don't want to pay anymore. So it also has caused this ripple in trying to create a good relationship, which is why I always say do it right from the start. Don't do it, halfway through or closer to the end. But yes, their rent increases can happen over 2.5%. And then if you have buildings that are very old and need to be renovated, or there's some, outstanding costs, they can apply to the board. They can apply to the board as landlords to, show them, well, we need to change the roof. So there's actually 2 apartment buildings downtown Toronto where they've applied for this above regular increase. And the tenants have started a union and have refused to pay rent and refused to abide by these increases. And they're trying to fight the board because people that are paying $1,200 now, a lot of the people in this building are on OW, ODSP, they're paying $1,200, $1,500, and now they want them to pay $2,000 plus, which is impossible because they're not even getting that money in. They don't work. They don't have the ability.
Sorry, maybe I missed part of that there. So how are they able to increase it to that much?
They go to the landlord will go to the board and they will put in an application and they will say, we need to replace all the windows. They're dangerous.
What was it? What's that called again? Above guideline
rent.
Right.
Yeah,
increase.
Okay.
AGI.
Right. So they've gone in there, they've done some renovations, and now they're like, hey, look, because of the work that we've done, we've replaced the roof and the windows and flooring, maybe whatever. Right. Okay.
Or they need to do it.
That's interesting. So they can do that. To me, that's just regular maintenance of the property. I thought it was more maybe they can get by if, hydro spiked up and utilities. But so what would you see in those cases? Do you think they'll get that approval?
They do. They do get their approval. Those 2 specific buildings, they're side by side. They've been battling it out, that I know. And then there's 2 buildings in the Lawrence West area, I believe, 2 apartments where the tenants have band together. They don't want to pay the rent, not because of increase. They do the regular increase every year, the legal increase. They are older buildings, but the problem is there's no maintenance. So there's a huge issue with bed bugs. The whole building is in terrible state, and Canada Post won't even deliver mail there. So my question is, forget about everything else. Health and safety, right? We have a health and safety department. Have they not gone in there? Have they not looked? Is there no specific policies that are in place where people's, type of living conditions have to be maintained in a proper state, healthy, safe?
Well, let's look at the Toronto housing.
Yeah.
That's the state they're in, right? They're one of the worst landlords.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been like that forever. But people have had no voice. People have not said anything because they didn't have a platform. And social media, as amazing as it is also terrible because it gives everybody a platform. And it could be unfair to say that, but you can get people that are starting a poor platform that, their intentions are bad. But nevertheless, we have social media, which now gives us a voice that everyone can hear.
For sure. I was looking at an article last week. I just pulled it up here. So it says applications for personal use eviction are up 77% in Toronto. That is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that. Why do you think that's happening? Is it because of the interest rates have gone up significantly? Like, these landlords can't afford it. Maybe they're stuck in a variable rate. Like, what are you seeing? You must see it.
So I see a few different things. I see the applications going in because they have a child that's moving in. Maybe they thought that they would have a property for their kid that, they were able to purchase, but they haven't been for whatever reason. The market, job loss, whatever it is. Maybe, they want to sell. They want to sell because they want to downsize, because they can't afford everything, because of the changes in the market. But what the interesting part is that I'm seeing a lot of N12. So N12 is an application that you put in. It's the first application you put in when you either want to move in yourself, when you have a family member that's going to be moving in, or if you've sold the property and the purchaser is moving in. Okay.
Right.
Now I've seen N12s where there has been no agreement of purchase and sale. So when a tenant calls me and says, my landlord says they've sold the property, I have to leave. Okay, let me look at the N12. So I look at the N12 and I say, okay, let's see, where's their agreement of purchase and sale? Okay. A lot of these people haven't sold yet because they are promising vacant tenancy. They're promising vacant possession.
Right.
So these landlords want to show the house vacant. They're afraid to tell the tenants that they're selling because then there's this brand new thing that never existed before called cash for keys. And everyone says, is this legal? It's not illegal. It's not something that you can force somebody to do. But if your tenant turns around and says, oh, you want your keys? Okay, I want $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. This is a new thing. It's a new thing that just came out of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it came out of. And it made these landlords feel in a way helpless. And then on these forums, what do I see the tenants say? Oh, they're going to sell their property. They're going to make lots of money. Don't worry. 30, 40, 50 grand isn't going to hurt them.
That's so crazy. But, that cash for keys has been around for a while. I think COVID just really brought it up higher to the surface because cash for keys, we've known about that for many years, right? But now tenants are asking for like 30, 40, 50 grand. Before it was like, maybe we'll start at like 2,000 and maybe you get up to
Max out at 5.
Yeah.
No, they're rejecting 30, 40, 50,000.
Come on.
They're rejecting it. I had a sweet, sweet, sweet couple landlord that offered 50,000 and their tenant rejected it and asked for 80. And they gave it to him.
Really?
They gave it to him.
So after that N12 has been issued, they're still asking for the cash for keys after the N12?
Yeah. So you have the N12.
Yep.
The N12 comes with 1 month's rent. That's the law. You have to give them 1 month equivalent.
Right.
You kind of wait and see what happens. They have a couple of weeks to kind of get back to you. Usually, what do they say? They say, take me to the board. I'm not going anywhere. And then that's when negotiations start. That's when, the landlords say, well, what do you want?
But what if somebody is moving in? So legitimately somebody is moving in. They're, a purchaser now has sold their home. They've got to move into this property. Let's say now you give them 90 days. I think, is it 60 or 90 for that, for N12?
60.
60. Okay. What can you do with that N12?
Nothing.
Can you not take it to the landlord and tenant board and file it to kind of, no, there's nothing you can do with that.
No, the N12 is almost like a warning. All of the N forms, aside from the N11, they're just a prequel to the L forms. That's all that they are. So majority of them are just prequels because then.
I thought you could start a process, or maybe it's the N11 where you can start the process. So let's say now I issue an N11, because the N11 now, and I guess we'll talk about this a little bit, is where we both agree to end the tenancy, which is really what you would want to get instead, because the tenant's signing it, the landlord's signing it. You can't file that at the landlord and tenant board, can you not?
No. So the N11 is just the agreement between the two parties. You
Okay.
want me to leave? You want me to leave on this date? Okay, I'll leave on this date, and we'll both sign it.
Okay, I thought there was a way you can actually start a process.
No, it's not. It's just an agreement. It's an agreement between the two of you. It's not a notice. It's not, a step to the next one. It's just the agreement saying,
Right.
yeah, no problem, I'll leave. I was going to leave anyways.
Okay, so then what happens now if they don't leave on that date?
So if an N11 is signed and they
Yeah,
don't
and
leave,
11, yeah.
if an N11 is signed and they don't leave, then you've now wasted time as a landlord and you have to file a brand new form. So depending on what the situation is. So have they agreed to not leave because they stopped paying rent? It really depends what it is. Unless there is a perfect amicable situation between landlord and tenant,
Yeah.
I don't usually talk about the N11 with anybody because, well, they don't need me if they have an N11 because both parties are
Agreeing to
in a good place. Yeah.
Right.
Whether one's moving away or not, but they're okay. It's been understood.
Who can serve the notice?
Um,
Like, does it have to be the landlord, or obviously I assume the property manager can also serve the notice as well too, but is there anybody outside of those two that can serve a notice? Like, can I just have Quinton, listen, man, I'm busy. Can you just go serve this notice to my tenant?
yeah, I don't think it matters who serves it. No, it
Okay.
doesn't matter who serves it. You can have a process server do it. They fill out a certificate of service anyways. Whoever serves it, it has to be served properly. That's all. It has to be filled out properly, so properly, and it just has to be served within the correct parameters. So a lot of people say to me, "Can I serve by email?" And although it's not wrong, it doesn't state it in the forms. And if I'm looking at it from a legal perspective, I follow the rules. The rules say personal service, mail, under the door, those are it. If you have an agreement in your lease, if it's part of your agreement that you can serve documents or communicate by email, then that's okay. But it's got to be in the lease. And a lot of people don't put that stuff in the lease. Instead, they want to put no pets, which doesn't count.
All right.
But if you put a form of communication is by email, because sometimes you have landlords who English isn't their first language or could be overseas, right? They live, 6 months in Mexico and 6 months over here. That you want to be able to have any form of communication, right? So I never like email because it's not specifically stated, but people do it anyways.
Yeah.
Can we circle back to the adjudicators? I think before we started recording, we know that they hired 40 more this year, but yet we're seeing a backlog. Just as we thought it was getting better, 6 to 8 months. Now you informed us it's more like 8 to 10 months. Where's the disconnect between those numbers? What's creating this new backlog now?
I think there was about a 20,000 application backlog during COVID. And then in February, when our government spent, I think it was $4 million on new adjudicators into the landlord and tenant board, the applications were at 40,000. And I think right now they're at 50 to 55. So
they're still going up, even with that spend to get more adjudicators.
it's not enough. The amount of things that are happening are surpassing the amount of help that's increasing. On top of that, you have adjudicators that don't have any specific background in, I'm not saying you have to be a lawyer or paralegal or anything specific, but they don't have a specific background in what the law is about. And these are adjudicators that are deciding your fate. They're deciding whether you stay or you go. They're deciding whether you get paid or not. Everything is on them. So when they get hired, they're just opening a manual. And I'm not saying it's like 3 pages and they read it and they go, but they're being trained by a manual and they don't really have any real life experience as to what actually happens. And not everybody's case is the same. Everybody is different. Even though one person may not be paying and one other person may not be paying, completely different situations. And they're supposed to be impartial and they're supposed to, not have either side and make an impartial decision. but it feels it sounds like sometimes they favor the tenant, which, everyone says it. They favor the tenant, which is why landlords are just living in fear.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a big problem when if you're going into a hearing, just you feel like you're rolling the dice. You don't know that mindset of that adjudicator. There's no sort of set standard across the board. It's who you get on that day.
I also think that there's been a lot of strange applications that go in. I think they need to really look at limitation periods. There's a lady that contacted me 2 weeks ago. She is probably over the age of 85. And she had taken somebody in almost 3 years ago. And he had left 2 years ago. And he is now suing her for harassment. And by suing her, he's taking her to the board. She's 85 years old. Okay.
Really?
I'm pretty sure, like when I was trying to get her to email me everything, it was a challenge. And he's taking her to the board, and he moved out 2 years ago. And because his application went in, before the 1 year was over, and by the time it got to her, it's been that long. It's actually been that long it took for it to get to actually her. What is she supposed to do? He's suing her for $30,000. For what?
Wow.
And it's a nightmare that's just continuing for her.
When you do the N12,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say, and I'm sure this happens all the time, we'll talk about this, is the landlord lies. Because they say, hey, you know what, I got a family member that's going to move in, but they don't. Because the rent that they're paying is $1,500. They know they can now get $3,000. What if the tenant finds out 2 months down the road or 6 months down the road? What recourse do they have?
Take him to the board and sue him.
Really?
Yeah. Take him to the board. Make sure you have your evidence, because the onus of proof is always on the applicant. Always. So get the pictures, videos. There could be ads, rental ads. Do whatever you have to do. Well, you found out somehow. You found out that they were lying a couple months later somehow. So just make sure you have as much as you can and just go to the board.
Have you seen where the tenant wins, and what type of payments are we talking about?
Yeah. So there was actually a personal injury client who they were living there for 30 years. Wonderful people. And they were forced to leave, and they left very willingly. They had their 90 days and they actually left. They didn't fight anything. They had to pick up everything and move. And then they found out that they just got the whole house re-rented. They took them to the board by themselves, because you could do a lot of it by yourself. They took them to the board by themselves, and they got 25 grand.
Really?
Yeah. And this was pre-COVID.
Landlords, be careful, right? Don't lie.
Don't lie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't lie. I'm telling you, I need to do a boot camp for landlords, and I need to do a boot camp for tenants.
Let's do it. We'll do one next year in Jan or Feb.
We have to.
Yeah.
We have to, because people are just getting bad advice.
Yeah. And, and as somebody's listening to this and they're like, you know what? I do not want to be a landlord. Listen, I think these are important conversations, because it's to let you know this is a serious business, but this should still not discourage you from being a landlord. Just make sure you know what you're doing. You're doing it with professionals, and you're treating your tenants like they are legit clients, because 100% they are. Like I look at the portfolio that I have, and I can tell you, and knock on wood, I've got great tenants. But I've treated them like gold. I treat it like a business. They have my phone number. They can call me. But I'm not going to fix any toilets. I don't fix anything. Look at these hands. I don't fix nothing.
There was a toolbox here like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, but that's like hanging pictures. I ain't doing any of those crazy stuff. Right? I mean, back in the days I used to, but you can hire this stuff out to professionals as well too. Or even if you want to be the landlord, you can bring those professionals in to do the plumbing, to do the roofing, to fix whatever it is. Just because they're calling you doesn't mean you have to go there and do the work. But you do have to treat it like a business. And I think that's what this conversation is about today, is treating it like a business, understand the pitfalls, understand the issues that can come up if you just treat it like it's oh, well, it's just, I'm just going to kind of run it on the side of my desk. No, that's not how it works.
And you have options, right? We have clients that have no interest in being hands-on landlords, so that we source it out to a property manager. So you never have to deal with a tenant. Sure, you have to communicate with your property manager
Yep.
and make sure everything adds up end of the month and have someone you can trust. But you don't have to deal with tenants on a day-to-day if you don't want to. You can still get into the investment world without dealing with the day-to-day of tenants.
Yeah.
Right.
What else are tenants calling on? Like, do you ever hear tenants calling or reaching out to the board because the property is not legal?
No,
No? Okay.
to be honest with you, no.
You don't hear too much of that?
A lot of tenants are reaching out because they have to leave.
Mhm.
That's the honest truth. A lot of them are just reaching out because they have to move out for whatever reason.
So there's definitely an uptick. So you're seeing it, even when I look at this article here, like 77% up.
It's
That's
huge.
huge.
It's huge. The amount of phone calls that I've gotten has gone up 400%.
I know I think we asked this earlier, but what can be done to fix this? Because it's got to be two things. I think a housing crisis and interest rates. How do you fix this problem that we're in?
Well, I think a lot of people jumped into it without understanding what the real costs are in terms of, I'm going to be a landlord. I'm going to be a landlord, no problem. You know, they just kind of just way overwhelmed themselves.
Uh-huh.
That's it. And, you know, tenants have been paying for it, or tenants have been, you know, making them suffer.
Yeah. You know, I've talked about this before, is a lot of people jumped into real estate investing during COVID
Mm-hmm.
because they thought, like, when you saw those homes go up, they were going up fast. And you know what the problem is that during those 2 years, there was almost like no fear.
Sorry, Gary. The only fear there was the fear of missing out.
Correct.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
the only fear. What do you call it? FOMO.
Yes,
FOMO.
FOMO.
Yeah, the FOMO
Yes,
fear.
Yes.
And that is when you make bad decisions, right? Now fear is back. It's a good thing. And I've told many investors, like, this is a good time to be getting back into real estate,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you also have to be smart about it as well, too, and run your numbers and, you know, find good properties, right?
Well, I think now if we circle back to your question, how do we fix this? I think your phone's going to continue to ring because you have these 77% of people trying to get out, sell their properties, get out of the landlording business. The need for shelter is not going away. We talk about housing affordability. The younger kids can't buy. We know that. Well, rent is part of the affordability issue as well. We're going to have a society way more renters. So I don't see these calls stopping anytime soon.
No, it doesn't stop. But what I try to do what I can do. So when somebody calls me, I work backwards. I ask them, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to happen at the end of the day so that we can kind of come to an agreement? I try to avoid the board at all costs because I try to avoid having the clients go to the board at all. Tenants, landlords, whoever it is. So I find that I've become a mediator and I've tried to come to a resolution. Not both parties are going to be happy and not both parties are going to be miserable. A happy medium, whatever it is.
That's just good life advice in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do that even in my business as being a realtor. Like, you know, like, oh, well, that just go deal with the lawyers. No, how about us, two real estate agents, let's see if we can figure this out between our clients and solve this. And I think that's just good life advice for anything that you do, as opposed to just putting it in the hands of the lawyers or the judge or the adjudicator, whatever it may be, right? That's how it should be.
Yeah, because you're gambling. You're really essentially gambling whenever you're doing that. So then you've put yourself in a situation where, you know, you haven't gotten rent for 12 months, or you're in a situation where your landlord wants to come in and see the unit every month because now they're upset that you're not paying the rent, or now they're upset that you don't want to move out. People become vengeful. Nothing bad has happened, although there was something in Stony Creek at the beginning of the year where the landlord had shot the two tenants.
I don't think I heard that one. Did you hear that one?
Yeah, yeah, and they were set to move out the next day.
So the landlord went over there.
The landlord lived in the house.
Oh, okay.
He lived upstairs. They lived in the basement, and the basement was terrible condition. Mold. They've been to the board from the articles, and they've been taking him to the board, and they finally decided they're moving out. And they probably got into an argument, and he chased them outside, and he shot both of them right on the lawn in front of the neighbors.
That's crazy. Did he kill them?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw this one.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then there was a video incident in Brampton, I think it was 3 months ago, also non-payment of rent. And they have the homeowner with a knife going at the tenants, not stabbing them, but it's on video, right? People are coming to their breaking points because you're not paying rent, which is in turn my mortgage, or could be, the food that I put on my kid's table. Everyone has a situation. Everyone has a situation. Everyone's living this life, and everyone's situation is different. So if there's no communication, it's going to explode.
Communication is always the key. That's when things break apart, is when you don't have the right communication or proper communication.
In everything.
Yeah.
In every client, in every relationship, in every interaction that we have in this world, it's all about communication.
Yeah. How much notice do you have to give a tenant before you enter the premises?
24 hours.
24 hours. What if they don't comply? You get there and now they don't want to let you in.
You got to try again.
Try again or go to the board. Like you just can't, walk in. I mean, I guess you can with the key. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So you can do that.
Of course.
But if they tell you to get out, now you got to go to the landlord and tenant board.
Yeah. Or you try again, or you go in with a third party that has nothing to do with your tenancy. So you go in with a contractor. Depends on what you're going in for. So if you're going in because you want to check out, the smoke alarm, that's why I say, when you have a tenancy that's about to start, send me your agreement. Send me your lease agreement. Let me look it over. Let me give you suggestions, because advice is free. Let me give you suggestions of what you can put in there to protect you and protect your tenant. Let me tell you which ones that you should take out because they're illegal. And let me tell you the ones that you should put in, because you can put in that you're going to come in every 3 months with someone that's going to clean the house, do a deep cleaning, depending if it's a condo or if a house, right? Clean the chimney. Like you can do a million things. And to get somebody to come in and clean the house, it's $150 every 3 months, right? So you go in and you have someone that's going into the place, you go in with them and you have an opportunity to look around.
Right.
I'm not saying to, be sneaky or underhanded, but it's a way to, be able to inspect your unit or put into your lease agreement that you're going to go in and change the batteries to the smoke alarm or the carbon monoxide detector every 4 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad idea, especially if you run your numbers and you're able to budget for that. It's great because you're getting somebody to come in there, clean your property, and it also gives you an opportunity to inspect the property. While you're in there inspecting the property, though, can you take pictures and videos? How does that work? Because now they've got their personal, belongings in there.
So you can, but you have to be careful as to what's in the picture. So none of their personal belongings should be in the picture. If you're taking pictures of the fire alarm, of the smoke detectors or anything, then it's just the ceiling, right? Or if you're taking pictures of the plumbing, it's just whatever's under the sink. You shouldn't be taking pictures of, their bedroom, because what was the relevance in that?
Right.
What's the use? And you always, maybe it's just me, I always think about anything that I do, I always think about the end game. So I always think about when I'm in front of a judge or an adjudicator, making a decision. How is my action reflecting on what I just did? But that's how I think. That's because I've just been groomed to think that. A regular person wouldn't do that, right? If they're not in this business, thinking, okay, I'm going to take a picture of this bedroom. Why did I take a picture of the bedroom, right? So you have to be smart, which is why there's so many people available to outsource, to do this stuff for you.
Right. And this is another good point too, is that when you do take possession of your investment property, do a video walkthrough. Then when you go in for your inspection, and if there's damage on the wall, like you're saying, take a picture of that damage of that wall, but don't take a picture of the whole entire bedroom is really what you're saying. Like take a picture of the things that you're concerned with.
There are companies that will charge you $200 to $300 to do a full inspection and report with pictures on move-in date. You can go ahead when you purchase a property, you don't do an inspection. You have a new tenancy starting on the 1st. You can tell the tenant, hey, let's meet on the 30th, 31st. We'll do a walkthrough with my contractor, with my inspector. You go through the whole place. You get a report that day where you can both have a copy of it. If you ever need to use it down the road, if it comes to, the tribunal, you can use it there. You have a third party that has nothing to do with this. And you also have a starting point. So in 6 months, when the tenant says, oh, this was never working, or there was problems with the washing machine, you can revert back to that report and say, well, it was working on this date. And I did try coming into the unit 4 months later and you refused access to me. So what's the problem? What happened? And you never notified me up until this point, right? It's almost, and I don't want to promote it as if you're trying to build evidence before needing to go to a board or needing to go to the hearing, but you always have that sense of security, that insurance. Yeah. For whatever reason. Maybe you don't need it at all, but it was literally $200-$300.
Yeah, for sure. I remember we always used to talk about percentages. I wonder if this number has changed.
Yeah.
So when we used to do the fast start class, we still do a fast start class. Chris and Quinton do it. We used to say, because the biggest fear a lot of people had was tenants, right? And so we used to say 80% of tenants are good. 10%. That's a little your frown on your face there. Let's see. So it sounds like maybe the numbers changed. 80% of tenants were good. 10% of tenants were great, meaning that they would actually leave your home in better condition than you gave it to them. And then 10% were actually bad. And so you had a 90% chance of success. You think that number's changed now?
So I like to live in a rainbow world. What I want to say, 100% of people are good. Okay. Do I think it's changed? I'm going to say no. I feel like it's the same.
Okay.
I feel like it's the same because all you hear is the bad. You never hear the good. No one's ever called and said, I have the best landlord. I have the best tenant. I just think it just hasn't come up. I only hear the bad. And even though it's gone up a lot of what I'm hearing, I still think there's 80% good tenants out there.
I believe so as well, too. I think where people get themselves in trouble is not screening properly. One of the things that we used to do, and we did this for years, was screen all tenants for all of our investors. We used to do that. So we became professionals at knowing how to talk to tenants, screen them. We also used to put pet friendly, all credit scores welcomed. Because when you do pet friendly, now whether or not you decide to go with them, they just told us they had a pet. And that's what you want. And you know what? And I've had tenants move in with pets, but I just want to know, hey, what kind of pet do you have? Is it like a little chihuahua or is it like a 200-pound monster of a dog? Right? And is this going to work in this little small unit? Right? But I think that's really what it comes down to is learning how to screen tenants, learning how to ask the right questions and getting the right documentation.
100%. People get too desperate. Oh my gosh, I don't want to have a vacancy and pay my mortgage this month without the tenants. And professional tenants, they can source out these landlords and it's vice versa, right? They show up on the driveway with first and last cash ready to go, right? You hear the typical stories, pull on the heartstrings, right?
Right.
And,
yeah. Look, if somebody wants to move in tomorrow, why? Where are you? Who are you running from?
Yep.
Right. And the other thing as well, too, be careful of even sometimes I think calling the landlord. Sometimes you may want to call the previous landlord. Because if I got like a bad tenant, you guess what that landlord is going to say? Oh yeah, John's amazing. Right. Because he wants John out of his apartment or his unit or whatever. Right.
So you also have to trust that the person that you're calling is the person who's actually the landlord or a previous employer. Right? Which is part of that whole screening process. And there's companies out there that will do the due diligence and make sure that, ABC Inc. exists, it's standing. They may even take a drive out there. You could take a drive out there. Go take a drive out there, see who the employer is. Make sure it's not a buddy of his, just, answering the phone. That's all part of the due diligence that people have to do as landlords, which is why I say a lot of landlords are not doing their part, right? They have to do their part. And then I've heard a lot of stories where people are not accepting anybody that has anything under like a 700 credit score, right? They're flat out rejecting these applications.
Really?
Flat out rejecting them. They could be paying a year up front. Then you're offering a year up front. Why are you offering a year up front? You're not allowed to ask for it. You're allowed to offer it. But then people start getting scared. Well, why are they offering a year up front? What's going to happen after that year? That's it. This is the climate. Everyone is afraid. Landlords and tenants. Trust me, the tenants are just as afraid of the landlords as they are of them. Right. So because they have no sense of security, they could want to sell their house anytime, move a whole family. I have a whole family that has to leave. They've lived there for 8 years. Kids have gone to school in that area. They have to leave. And they have to leave because the landlord has to sell the house. So then it puts me in a weird position because the landlord has to sell the house. They have to. They can't afford to keep the house. And the tenants now have to leave and they can't afford to leave. They can't afford moving costs. They can't afford a higher rent. And they don't want to move their kids out of this area. What do? You kind of have two sad stories here. Where do you find that happy medium?
Yeah, it is. It's really difficult out there right now. It's sad. It's sad. And especially now because inflation has just gone through the roof as well. I went out yesterday to get just a soup for lunch, like $16 for some water and some noodles. Yeah. like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I jumped the gun when you said, have these numbers changed? What I thought you were going to ask is, the income ratios to rent, right? And that's part of our problem, right? Where these rents shoot up so high. So now you're trying to screen tenants and see if they can afford it, right?
Talk about the ratio. Just for somebody who's new, who doesn't understand like a good ratio to use.
Yeah, usually we're 3 to 1, right? In that aspect. So we want to see the income, 3 times what that rental amount is. But, in this environment, you got to use discretion, right? Because those aren't always going to add up. And I'm with you, Simona. In terms of people, in my opinion, put too much weight on the credit score, right? Yes. It's like, let me look at the credit report. Did you take a ding on your credit because you were fighting with your cell phone provider and dug your heels in? I'm not paying this bill. Your rent took a hit, and I see your credit report, and you don't owe 20 grand on this card. You don't have a 50 car payment. Then I'm like, okay, there's a story behind that. People got to look at the whole picture. They're so finicky. And to be honest, I see that a lot with realtors. If we're trying to help a client sneak into the downtown rental market, it's like, no, this credit score or nothing. It's like, okay. And I think that's part of the reason why people have turned to, I'll offer you a year up front, because they're like, my 725 credit's not going to cut it because someone's in there with 850, right? And it's become very cutthroat.
I've taken many tenants that didn't have the best credit score, like in 100%. The low 6s, even high 5s, mid 5. I just want to see what's your story.
Yes.
What happened?
Life happens.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you going through a divorce? Is it just a little bit of a hiccup? Or do you just never pay anybody back?
Exactly. And you can see that from the full credit report, right? If you see delinquencies for the last 3 months on all these credit cards, okay, there's red flags, right? Yeah. But low credit score, and you see the whole picture, things are on the uptick. Yeah, we're human. You got to communicate.
Listen, when we used to buy, we used to be able to buy single family homes and cash flow back in the days. But listen, I still get a tenant in there, and I know I can get way more for it. But you know what? He looks after the property. I pop in there at Christmas time, drop off a little gift. This guy seeds the grass, cuts the lawn, does the snow removal. You can eat off the floor inside the house. I go there, they're baking cakes at Christmas. People are like, yeah, but no, they're looking after my property, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to have those type of properties as well, too. I mean, I know it's difficult now to buy a single family home that's going to work unless you're going to go out to, I don't know, Campbellford or Petawawa or, way out, northeast or whatever. But listen, there's good tenants out there. This scary stuff is just letting you know how bad it can get, and not to jump into this, and not get educated. Learn how to screen tenants, treat them like legit, proper clients, and treat them like a business.
Yeah.
It's like any other business. Would someone just jump out one day, I'm going to start this business without educating themselves
That's
on
right.
it? Right.
That's
So it's
right.
no different than any other business. Like, are you going to open a restaurant tomorrow and not educate yourself? Just say, oh, I got a kitchen here. Maybe I'll flip some burgers. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
same thing.
Resources are available for free, not for free. They're available. So why not use them?
What would you recommend somebody do first if they're looking to get into this? Like what? And you said some resources. What type of resources would you maybe kind of point them down first to look into, or call you, talk to you, like?
Yeah, so I would have them speak to other landlords, landlords that have been successful that I know of.
Mhm.
They can talk to them about their experiences. I would, encourage them to, talk to me for 30, 60 minutes about how to start things off right, what the first year can look like, what the first 5 years can look like. Have a good discussion about it. Understand who they are. Get to know who they are. Get to know what their expectations are.
Yeah.
So, help them find that perfect tenant. Help find them that perfect match.
Yeah. Attend a smart home choice event because Simona's there in her
Yes.
booth. She's there to
Yes.
educate you.
Talk. Yes.
Talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Love talking.
Yeah.
So
that's
why
it.
not?
Exactly. Yes. About getting out there and networking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Anything else that we should touch on that you're seeing in your world that we haven't touched on yet?
I think we've touched on everything. I just really encourage people, don't wait until something bad happens. That's all. Don't wait until, the 11th hour. Don't call me and say, oh, it's been 4 months. They haven't paid. Well,
I know.
why didn't you call me 4 months ago?
Yeah.
Why didn't you call me the next day? Just to get information. I'm always available. I'm always happy to talk. That's my point. My point is that you would rather wait and see what happens, or worry, or talk to somebody else than, I'm not talking about just talk to me, talk to any professional. We're available for you. We're even on Facebook. We're everywhere. DM us. We'll tell you, listen, don't do this, do that. And it will save you so much time, so much stress, so much lost sleep, landlords or tenants.
Yeah. Simona, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank
If
you,
somebody
Gary.
wants to learn more about what you do, or they want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Mayfair Law Group is the name. We are on Instagram. We're online. Send me a DM. Send me an email. We're everywhere.
Yeah, awesome. It was nice meeting you as well, too. We first met at the property show. Yes. Yeah, I interviewed
Yannico.
Yannico. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how's he doing?
Yeah, he's good. He's busy with the real estate stuff.
Drag him out to the next event.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I should.
Yeah.
I will.
Absolutely.
I absolutely will. Thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you, both of you.
All right, awesome. Listen, I enjoyed this. I really did. I think this is very good for people to listen to this and listen to it again. Go back, educate yourself, learn. This is important stuff.
Very.
Right? Don't overlook this. All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.